Next Level Conversation with Jeff Gabriel.
What's up, Anthony, Natasha? How are you?
We're doing good.
Good. It's June 16th, 9:07 p.m. Welcome to the Next Level Conversation. How are you?
Doing you?
We're good.
Cool. For those people that are going to watch or will be watching, we have Anthony Robinson on the left and Natasha McMullen. They're friends of mine. They're both in fashion and design, and I met you guys just due to your incredible creativity, artistic ability. We've done some things together, and I've always found both of you extremely interesting, knowledgeable, intelligent, just, great quality people. And I wanted to talk to you guys tonight a little bit. Are you guys there?
Yeah,
we're here. We can hear.
Your screen's frozen. Is my screen frozen too?
Yeah, it goes in and out.
Yeah, it goes in and out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not even moving at all either. There you go. You're back, and I'm back as well too. I wanted to talk to you guys about Black Lives Matters, and I wanted to talk about it with you because you're the young generation. You're the millennials, the Generation Y. You're both probably in your early 20s.
Yeah.
Natasha, you're mixed ethnicity. Anthony, African American. What's the deal these days with young kids? Do you like to be called African American, or do you like to be called Black? What do you like? What is appropriate these days?
Well, I think that for a lot of people feel that they're interchangeable. Me personally, I don't mind being called Black because I don't necessarily see it as something that's derogatory or anything like that. I get the connotation where, you want to stay as far from like coloreds or Negro or anything like that, but I don't think that Black is a naughty word. So you can say Black or even Black American if you just want to cover your bases there. But if I were, say, from the UK, you wouldn't call me an African American. You would call me a Black person. So as far as it goes, like Black person is perfectly fine. It's perfectly PC.
Right. And what about for you, Natasha? What makes you comfortable?
I'm perfectly okay with it. It's actually really funny. So because I am of lighter tone, I have to kind of remind people that I am Black. So whenever I'm out or whenever I talk to people, it's kind of like introducing yourself with a specific sexual gender. I have to tell them, like, I am Black. You can say African American, just because of the fact that, like, we are American and we are African descent, but it doesn't really bother me either way. Just not the old-fashioned words. I feel like those are outdated, as well as the stigma behind the words are a bit negative. So yeah, Black and African American is perfectly fine.
Right. Do you find that being of mixed race adds to any sort of complexities in your life, or
all the time?
All the time, right? People think sometimes you're white, sometimes you're Black, or mostly Black.
Well, if I'm around other Black people, they can tell. Just because a lot of Black people know that my skin tone is a part of the variation of color. And but when I'm around other people who are, I guess you could say, not used to such diverse mixed ethnicity within one person, they tend to assume that I'm Puerto Rican or that I've gotten Ecuadorian and Spanish from Spain, but not really Black. It's usually like a shocker for most people.
Right.
I guess from a distance I could pass as white, but when you get up close to me, it's like, no. You can see the difference in facial tone and structure.
Well, I guess one of the first questions that I have for both of you, just given these days that we feel that we live in a modern era and all the craziness that's going on in the world right now, and all the discussion and the concern about racism in the world, one thing that I do think about, and one thing that I do believe, is that many people of certain ethnicities that have issues with other ethnic groups don't necessarily have the time to spend with those people or get to know those people. And, you know, I have Black friends, I know you guys, but I don't think, you know, in many instances, people actually have a chance to experience another ethnicity up close and personal, like, you know, I have with you. And I'm not saying that a lot of other white people haven't, but given what's going on in the world, this discussion, this problem, I think that is part of the problem, that people don't have a chance to intertwine with each other and spend time with each other. And I guess what I wanted to know with you, as you were growing up, did either of you experience racism to a degree that was painful to you guys emotionally, or extreme discomfort?
Well, unfortunately, that's kind of a part of the Black experience in America.
Well, tell us.
Overt, like pointed racism,
yeah,
or
like in your face.
It's just like, say something that's kind of like the person wasn't necessarily nefarious with it. Like, it's just something that kind of is just like a microaggression, I think is the technical term, but it's basically just like something that like it is, but it wasn't a conscious racist attack or anything like that. Like, this is just something that the person is just more or less been either groomed to believe, or it's just like a common misconception or something along that kind of a line. So yeah, I would say that I know a lot of people that would have like a story, whether it be, you know, being followed in a mall or a store, or certain situations where you might walk in a neighborhood nicer than I guess what other people would believe to be where you belong, and you know, you have the police called on you, or you know, you get stopped and asked a lot of questions by people who are just worried about the safety of their neighborhood because there's been a lot of break-ins recently.
Has that happened to you guys at all?
Yeah.
Right. And how did that, like, you know, growing up over the years, did it make you feel somewhat as an outcast, or completely different, or something that you just got used to over the time, and it was something that you were pissed off about? I mean, did it make you feel like an outsider? I mean, how have you guys felt growing up as Black people in this country?
Well, you always are very conscious of the fact that you're outside of the norm, I guess you can say.
Even today.
Or what's accepted, or what's just inherently acceptable in society.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly you're proving yourself to be one of the good ones, or you're proving yourself to be some sort of exceptional, because unfortunately America doesn't necessarily you know, they don't reward Black mediocrity the same way that they would, say, you know, a white guy who just happened to keep his nose clean, and you know, he's not necessarily Bill Gates here, you know, but still he's worthy of respect as a person, just as a baseline. Whereas with us, we constantly have to prove that we're not criminals, that we're not you know, bad actors or anything like that. So a lot of that is something that you consciously have to navigate. Little things like changing the bass in your voice, or trying to smile extra just to keep people comfortable, because
standing a certain way. Because
people, I mean, even being on an elevator where I might give a woman like extra space just so she doesn't feel threatened to be in the elevator.
I just find it amazing, you know, like so many years after Martin Luther King, that this is still going on in this country like this, at this level. It's just absolutely, it's an abomination. It's incredible.
I would think that that's probably why you see a lot of cities on fire right now. A lot
of people are angry.
You have a lot of people where, you know, their grandparents went through this, their parents went through this, and, you know, now they're going through this, and some of these people have kids. So, you know, it's more of a paternal instinct to try to better the world for your child. So if that happens to mean that, you know, if you're trying to talk to people peacefully, or you're trying to show people that there's an issue and they're going to consciously ignore it over and over and over again, eventually you're left with violence being your only option, or at least that kind of lashing out to be your only option, because that seems to be what people pay attention to the most. No one cares until a Wendy's.
Well, I think the environment has gotten to a point now with the coronavirus being the catalyst and the stimulus for it that, many people have lost their jobs. Many people are either on unemployment or, are running out of money, or just don't have a great situation, presented in front of them right now. And that's one of the things that, I think we're all guilty of, is that it's not easy for us to step outside of our own home or what's going on with ourselves and be empathetic about what's going on in other homes and the problems and the challenges that people are having right now. And it's obvious that the challenges and the problems that people have for everyone are great, but more so now for specific ethnic groups and for certain income stratas or classes, however you want to label it. And people are really, really angry, and people are really, really scared. And I think that this George Floyd incident, which is just horrible, has been a catalyst for people to act out. I mean, and it's not just, because they want to just loot stores. I mean, that's part of it, but that's an indirect consequence of it. But I think people are just really, really upset of the social fabric in this country right now. And I think that's what this is about, this communication that's going on right now, this acting out.
Yeah.
I would say personally, you're going through the 2-month, 3-month period, depending on where you're from, where, you're under state quarantine, and, you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're social distancing, you're wearing your mask, your gloves, your hand sanitizing, you're washing your hands. And then it's like, everyone's kind of looking forward to the country being opened back up. And then you see, the video of George Floyd, where it's kind of like this haunting reminder that, even if America can come together to beat this coronavirus pandemic, you still have other issues that are just waiting for you as soon as you step outside for, certain groups, whether it be ethnic, whether it be sexual orientation, whether it be gendered. These groups are still targeted, and this is a 365-day kind of issue for them, where, the larger problems of the world affect them, as well as all of these smaller problems as well. So it's kind of like you're constantly under attack.
Especially when you go to school, and even today when you go to college classes, they write in these textbooks that as if like this is already an issue that's been solved, and it hasn't. So it makes it seem like everything that we do in America is a lie, just based on the fact that, okay, we've said something about it, boom, done. But when you go outside, when you experience that, it's like, why are we still dealing with this? Are we not as progressive as we say we are?
Well,
Aren't we America?
Well, it's obviously something that's been really been building, and this event has caused it to rise to the surface. And it's really troublesome to see. I don't want to get into the many specifics of what's right and what's wrong. I really want to hear, you being, young generation Black, your opinions and your feelings about it, and like what you see. I want your, interpretation. Why do you think, at this time with the George Floyd incident, why do you think that it has struck such a nerve, besides it just being such an atrocity and a horrible event? What do you guys see? What do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think that it's just George Floyd, actually. I know for me, I'm 25. So for me, the earliest name that I can remember during my lifetime is Sean Bell in New York.
Right.
Bell was a guy who basically got shot and killed by undercover cops. He was an innocent man. He was unarmed. He didn't do anything. And for weeks, New York marched peacefully. They were talking to legislative leaders. They were talking to the mayor. They were talking to the governor. A whole press parade ensued. And then, it kind of died off and nothing really happened from it. No one was really held accountable. a lot of people were upset. But, you know, we moved forward. We left it alone for the most part until it happened again. And this has been something that's happened, I mean, in increasing amounts since I've been growing up, where, you know, the list of names at this point is staggering. You know, and even with George Floyd's death, that wasn't the only death that week. You have Breonna Taylor, you have a couple of trans women and trans men who've also been killed. And, you know, Breonna Taylor's killers are still a part of the police force. They've signed a law to state that you can't do the thing that led to her death, but the people who killed her are still employed.
Well, it's really telling that it's not just racism in this world right now, but our society, our social fabric it's really warped right now. People are really, really angry, and, you know, there's definitely a breakdown in the fabric, and it's causing people to lash out at other groups, because I just don't think that from an economic perspective, our society can support everyone. And that's some of the reason that some of the things that are going on right now. I don't know if you guys ever hear of the Central Park Five, like back in the 80s? Remember that? It was like, I believe it was called the Central Park Five. Maybe I could be corrected by that, but it was a bunch of young black boys that were accused of murder in Central Park, and Donald Trump took out a full-page ad, basically stating that, you know, they should all be, you know, executed, whatever it may be at the time. And, you know, he was wrong, and they all got exonerated, and they didn't do it. But it's that kind of behavior that was going on back then is still going on back now. And the reason why I mentioned the Donald Trump incident, not that I want to talk about him, but we absolutely have no leadership in this country talking about this on an intelligent level.
Honestly, it's the fact that we're having such large events happening, and there's no one really to point to look for a direction on how we should move. It's a little, it makes me nervous personally, just because of the fact that when we look at history, we have people like Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, we have people like you know, Martin Luther King, and they were the leaders. And at this time, we, as a Black community, we're used to actually looking for guidance from the church. And because of the infrastructure, because of everything that's going on with the government, and obviously the pandemic, we're not allowed to congregate. We're not allowed to talk to each other, person to person, in front of each other, to really get the information that we need. And I feel that it can easily become like up in smoke really quick if we're all not careful. And it's a shame that we're in this position, because right now we do need this change, especially for the fact that Black Lives Matter means if our lives matter, then obviously all of us matter, because at the end of the day, we're all going to get the equal respect that we all should have. So it's one of those things that we really need to get down to, and it needs to happen like right now.
What do you think can be some of the potential outcomes positively from?
Positively, one of the potential outcomes can be that we need a stricter line of this discussion on who within our local jurisdiction for cities and states. We need a stricter way of going about voting and how we discuss who's going to be in office to represent us. That's what could be a positive solution to all of this, because if you don't have proper representation, then all the things that are happening will not get to the make or break statements, lawmaking policies. It won't be able to get to the heights that it needs to. A lot of the racial laws that were put into the system went to the Supreme Court. At the end of the day, if racism is an obvious issue, then why does it have to take what it did take then to do it now? And why does it have to go all the way through the systems to the Supreme Court if we all know consciously today that it's wrong?
Right.
It's just, it's like feeding fodder. Like, why are we doing this? We know this.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that a lot of this stems from a mistrust or just a complete lack of faith from the Black community in both America systemically as well as just judicially. People don't think that the system works in their favor. So ultimately, they're going to seek justice whatever way that they can get it. If that means, a couple of businesses are on fire, then, unfortunately, that's kind of what it's going to be.
Well, more than that, there are people that are dying, and
I mean,
the coronavirus has exposed weaknesses in the system.
The fact that you had America where we were more prepared to respond to a racial riot than we were able to respond to the coronavirus. It taking months for masks to be made. It took months for adequate testing to be accomplished, so on and so forth. And I think that something that a lot of people don't know, especially if you're not from these kind of low-income neighborhoods, is that we've been suffering, prior to the coronavirus. So if you can imagine that, things were more or less at a drip in low-income neighborhoods before, coronavirus completely shut that valve off. And
which valve is that?
Just financial, like money coming in. A lot of the people who are unemployed, who are on unemployment, who are unable to pay for their rent, these are people in low-income neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So their fears are that they're not going to be able to survive through this year, especially since before they were already, hand to mouth or paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And now that this has stopped a lot of the work that's available to them, they're like, well, how am I going to survive through this? But even more so, what hope is there in the future that I'm going to be able to return to, whatever semblance of the life that they had before? Because everyone's talking about after the coronavirus pandemic, isolation and the quarantining is done. They're talking about a new normal. So for a lot of people, they're wondering what that means for them specifically.
For you, and this is going on in your neighborhood right now. You can see this.
Yeah. A lot of people where they're skeptical of vaccines and things like that, just because of the racial connotation within the Black community and the medical community. Unfortunately, we don't have the best of relationships with one another. You have syphilis being injected into Black farmers and Black men and women in the South back in the early 1900s and 1800s. And, there's evidence of that. That's something that you can look up. And unfortunately, that was never fully addressed and fully put to bed with some sort of accountability being held. You have Black women who are receiving less care or substandard care, especially in prenatal and child care. So, there's still a disparity because people believe that Black women or just Black people in general feel pain differently or process pain differently. So you have a lot of the crackpot scientists' theories that existed, back when our grandparents and great-grandparents were the generation who were making the rules and things like that. You have those ideas and ideologies still being carried to this day because you don't have enough Black men, Black women in these sections. And sometimes that's by design.
Yep.
Right. How are people in the neighborhoods reacting to each other? Are the neighborhoods being supportive of each other, or is it more dark and gloomy? What are you seeing?
It's honestly kind of like a norm for us to support each other, even if, like, say it's like the Black community with the Spanish community. Basically, like, when kids are outside, there's going to be somebody sitting in their window watching the kids. If somebody is coming in through the door, someone's always holding the door for you if they see you. Like, it's kind of like our norm to lean on each other and make sure that we're all getting the care that we need, even if it's not from, you know, the government or the system. So for us, this is like the everyday. Like, we don't, as far as like you could say it's our bubble, we don't really lean on the outside.
Right.
I would say that the Black community has always been somewhat of a family, dysfunctional at times, but you know, at the end of the day, we're all here and we all care for each other. So,
Right.
As far as it goes, I've actually seen a unity within our community as well as other predominantly Black communities. You have a lot of newer Black business owners who are actually making record sales right now because they're promoting themselves within that sphere of unity with other Black people. So you have Black people financially supporting other Black people. So, you know, we're starting to kind of get our own circulation of money within the community where it's being spent and being given to places where it needs it the most.
Yeah. Is any of that coming through the church at all, or any of the local religious organizations, or is it just more?
I think that this is more
just, you know, relationships, connectivity through friendships and connectivity relations.
Yeah, I think this is more on the personal level than it is any specific one churches or a multitude of churches gathering. I think that this is just an issue that people feel passionately about without having the need to fly under any specific banner.
Yeah.
You come to represent yourself effectively at these marches or at these protests.
Are you guys well, not say happy, but I mean, you feel this is a positive thing for the Black community, these oppositions, these protests, what's going on right now with the police? What are your feelings on that?
I feel that they're necessary. I think that when you had Colin Kaepernick, where he was kneeling at the NFL games and he got the backlash that he got, where you had people framing what he was doing as an attack on veterans and on the Army and on the flag, you know, not what he was telling you that his problem was, but they just reshaped it and reformed it. They spun it to suit whatever agenda that they needed to push. And then you have, you know, LeBron James in the NFL, where they're wearing "I Can't Breathe" shirts.
I think everybody knows exactly what Colin Kaepernick was trying to say, and I think more so than ever. I know some people are saying that the riot shouldn't stop until he gets another tryout with another football team. I mean, I know that's just, you know,
a lot of it is that, you know, the Black community respects him for speaking up. And especially,
he's got balls, man. I can tell you, to do what he did in front of the world like that. I always get, you know, anybody thought of him, what any sort of story that they want to spin or however they wanted to label him. I just thought that, you know, here's a guy that's, you know, reached the pinnacle of, you know, the sporting world, and also, you know, I don't know what kind of neighborhood he came from, but you know, less than 1% of all college football players make it to the pros. I mean, it's an incredibly hard, difficult, you know, opposing odds. And, you know, here's a guy that was, you know, a quarterback and pretty successful at it. And, you know, he goes ahead and he risks it all and make a statement. And I think that, you know, probably from what he did, you know, is probably flowing over to today and what's going on right now in the Black Lives movement. But I don't think it's just, you know, about Black lives. I think it's just, you know, Black lives is at the forefront because your community and your ethnicity gets hit so hard, but there are so many disenfranchised people within this capitalistic structure, and it is the abuse of it. It's the lack of entropy, the ability to have enough energy in this financial society to fuel and provide for everyone. Is obvious that there's just a lack of energy for all, and the cracks in the fabric and the cement and the asphalt and the pavement. I just think that the Black Lives Matters which is a really important topic, is at the forefront of so many different groups and so many different people that feel disenfranchised. I mean, every, even middle class people that were doing well 10, 15 years ago, whether they're black or they're white, whatever ethnicity they are, people in general are having a hard time because of just how expensive it is and how much money is required to survive in this world. And so I think all of us are fortunate to have the Black Lives Movement, because I think the Black Lives Movement is not just representing the Black community. I think it's representing everyone, and a lot of people are suffering. And that's why you hear so much about the 99 versus the 1%. And, it's not that the 99 wants what the 1% have. The 99 just, want things maybe to be just a little bit easier. Nobody needs to have $1 billion. You know what I'm saying? It's just
want to be able to live. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody just wants to be able to. I think we're getting to a point in society where everybody just wants to live and just have a good life. I have a little boy now, and he's a little over 3 years old, and things don't look. Even though we've had horrible instances in our history that we've gotten over before, and I'm sure we're getting over this. It's a tough time, for him. And, my wife is Korean, so he's, half Korean, half Caucasian. And, I wonder what kind of challenges that, he may endure as he gets older, because the Asian community has their problems too. The Caucasian Jewish, I'm Jewish, but, not as bad, but we've had our battles in the past. So this is not just about Black lives, which is obviously at the forefront. It's about all of us, I think, to some extent, and maybe I don't know if it's being represented that way, or you guys see it that way.
Black Lives Banner definitely does encompass all of this. So, it's just like you said, like, because Black lives are put on the line so much, we have to be at the front of this, because
right.
If we're not, then everyone behind us doesn't matter either.
That's a really good point, because I was just sort of like riffing there a little bit, thinking about this. And, the Black lives, the Black people that are at the forefront of this movement, they're really at the forefront of this movement for everyone that's feeling kicked down, kicked in the ass, having a hard time. Things could be a lot easier for, having a hard time financially, just in their neighborhood, with their work, with their career, dealing with people, dealing with the fear of the world, dealing with the coronavirus. And, the Black community is standing up and being really, really brave for everyone. And I don't think I really realized that until having this discussion with you guys. And that's why I knew it would be really cool to talk to young people, young Black people in a young generation, because I don't have an opportunity to all the time, and I don't think a lot of people do have an opportunity to speak to young Black people. They don't run across. I mean, this sounds like, the way I'm presenting it sounds awful, but the truth of the matter is like,
a lot of people don't understand, like, because of the issues that we have when we do meet each other, it does stop us from talking to each other. It does stop us from being more diverse, especially, since before the pandemic, since before, the Black community had that, basically the crack with George Floyd. We never really had these discussions since maybe the 60s or the 80s. So this whole movement was long overdue for all of us to come together, and we didn't know that we would have the, I guess you can say, the audience that we are having today. We just kind of, like you said, like, we are being brave, but it's something, because we deal with it every day, we just kind of process that fear with a focus, and we have to make sure that whenever we step forward, it's a step forward into, okay, if I'm thinking about myself, how do I think about others in the process when I walk forward?
Right. That's a really good point. But I think it's also really important, like, I've gotten to know you guys over the last few years, and I've grown up in the cities, and I've always known Black people, and I've had some Black friends. I can't say that, the majority of my friendships are with Black people. They're not. But I think part of the problem is, I'm going to be honest, the majority of the people that I know or I grew up with are white, but I've always made an effort to have friends of different ethnicities. And especially the young people today in school, there's many, many more ethnicities that are mixed together in schools. When I grew up and I went to high school, it was like white Jewish, white Italian, 15 Black people, 2 Asian people. That was the mix. And that's how people grew up, not really having the intimate experience to really get to know, different ethnicities and recognize that their desires, their dreams, their aspirations, or just what's important to them is very much the same as everyone else. And people don't have the experience, and I've really, any Black people that I've gotten a chance to know, I've really enjoyed it. And I think that I hope that doesn't come across the wrong way, but what I'm saying is like, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's so many people that will make a statement about another ethnicity, and they don't even fucking know anybody in that group. They don't hang out with anybody in that group. Like, I would trust my child with you guys. I think you're both wonderful. Anthony's shows me his artwork, and I think he's like super freaking talented, or his video capabilities, your Natasha, your designing capabilities, or just your way to communicate. Like, I don't want to sound like a sycophant here, but I mean, I just think it's really important that for racism to go another level, people need to make an effort to really get to know the different groups and give themselves a chance to be connected and figure out a way to be connected to different ethnicities. And that was another reason why I had you guys come on today, because I wanted to talk to you and I wanted you to tell me what's going on, and I wanted you to tell me how you feel about it and what you see. And I want people to be able to see and hear you guys, because you both are wonderful people and you both have great minds and, great observations about, what's going on. Do you have any other feelings about like how the police are getting just reamed over this? I mean, look, the guy was a horrible dude, and that guy deserves to go to jail, but not all the police are bad people. I think we all recognize that, right? How do you feel about that?
So a lot of this isn't specifically about the police officers as a problem, more so than it's about the system that allows the bad officers to do what they do and get away with it without any problems.
Yeah.
Right. A little bit of the calls.
Understand is specifically the cop that killed George Floyd had around 14 to 17 other complaints about him.
Yeah.
In the span of a couple years. Right. That man should have not been
still
on the force.
A police officer, yeah.
If you're getting 14, 17 warnings from the community that this person is policing that he's a problem, and you ignore that, you're complicit in whatever crimes that this officer commits. And that's kind of the problem, where there seems to be very little accountability where there needs to be more.
What do you think about this defunding the police? I mean,
So when they're saying defund the police, what they're saying is change the judicial system the way that we know it currently.
Yeah.
Instead of there being one main police force to deal with every problem, we should have several agencies split up among certain, reoccurring crimes, because crime is predictable. That's one thing that we know. Now crime that we're able to do statistical analytics and things of that nature, crime is predictable. You can not only tell who's going to commit a crime, but you know which areas are more favorable to certain crimes than others. So you can have dedicated response teams or dedicated agencies to tackle certain issues that cops are not equipped to deal with. Cops can't talk down somebody with mental illnesses. They're not trained.
Yeah.
Cops can't respond adequately to domestic violence situations. They're not trained. So what we are asking for, what Black Lives Matter is asking for, is to take the multi-million-dollar and sometimes billion-dollar budgets from these police departments that they're using to basically militarize themselves, take that money away, split it up into different agencies, split it into education, because education always takes a major hit every year, no matter who's in office. you know, put that money into the neighborhoods. Because if you raise the standard of living, you basically get rid of the need for crime or the want for crime by criminals. Because most of these people aren't choosing to be hardcore criminals. They're choosing to live.
Why do you think that the police are, you say militarize themselves, why do you think the police are moving in that direction?
Well, for one, a lot of it has to do with the fact that how they approach us. They assume that because so the example of how you experienced high school, when you don't have that intimate experience being with a diverse crowd and you are told like now you have to watch over or police a specific area and these people do not look like you do not know how their behaviors are, it's always going to be an unknown of the fear that, oh, am I offending this person? Oh, how do I deal with this? So when they come to us and they approach us, obviously they want to subdue the issue, but in that process, they subdue us. They use tear gas, they use rubber bullets, they use the kneeling on the throat. Like it's not necessarily something that is the best way to go about it. And this is one of the complaints that we've had where we've explained to them that we need you guys to understand that we are human and you should behave with us as if we're human. And that can come in many forms. Like Anthony said, like put the money into education. They can take classes. A lot of people are actually advising the police to do a better job at the learning process and being able to do those things. Taking classes to be able to understand mental illness, basic mannerisms of different demographics and races and ethnicities. Jersey City, for just like to put that out there, we're about 65% more diverse than, like we have 65% diverse police officers in here that are from the city, which is why our issue with police officers isn't as great as you could say other states and other cities.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like Jersey City really has, and just for those who are listening, you know, you guys are in Jersey City, I'm in Jersey City too, right outside Manhattan. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, we didn't have any violence here in Jersey City, nor do we have much in Newark, which
riots. We had our riots of our own, and Jersey City basically burnt down the city for like 3 days. So we just haven't had it for a long time, and people here are...
It didn't happen recently, but that you're talking...
No, this was around the LA riots, 1960, 1965.
No, but I'm saying recently, I mean, it's a very... Jersey City is a very... it's a diverse community. Yes. I mean, it has an extremely large gay population, big Indian population, Korean, white, Black. It's one of the reasons that I actually love being here and that I'm raising my son here right now, because there's just so many different people. And I think, you know, a lot of the diversion and polarity that's going on in the country, in different parts of the country, is just that there isn't so much of a mix like there is here. Even Manhattan has become very homogenous. You know, lower Manhattan is not diverse anymore. It's wealthy.
Diversity needs to be a thing. Like you need to actually have that, not only diversity, but you need to have that heart there where people actually want to be with each other, because you can see in other cities where they do have some diversity, but obviously some people don't like that. And they need to understand that it's that uncomfortableness you have with another ethnicity is not something you should go off of and use as an offense. You shouldn't even use it as a defense either. You should just see it as it's different, but it's not bad, you know? That feeling we have in Jersey City is just the fact that we know we're all coming together to a city to live. And that's one of the things that growing up here, I've noticed that we're all just kind of trying to make sure that we can get to day by day together. Because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, then the city falls apart literally. Because whenever there's any problems in the city, it's not necessarily the police that are called. It's usually like neighbors talking to each other about it. Like whenever we have those events downtown, or we have any events over on West Side for, the annual summertime situations, it's always the communities coming together, making sure, like, are the tents set up? Are all of the food catering set up? Like, it's more of like we have to talk to each other to make sure that happens.
Well, make sure you have one of those events. You let me know so I can come down.
Yeah.
I want to bring my little boy Reese. What's going on with like the stores in the community? Do you see stores opening up again in your community? Do you see any new development in regards to commerce or stores at all? Any local people starting new business, or were starting new businesses before Corona? What's going on in your local community that way?
Well, luckily for us, a lot of the Bergen Lafayette area, we're all pretty close with one another. You have a lot of like kids where they'll grow up with, the owner of a corner store, or they'll grow up with the owner of a restaurant, being in that restaurant. So it's kind of like, you become a regular, you guys just talk personal things, barbershops and hair salons and things of that nature. So we've all been more or less keeping tabs on one another. You have stores where they're starting to open up and people are supporting. People have been supporting through Corona, even with, a lot of people struggling financially and things like that. The one thing that I haven't seen is like a lot of selfishness around here. A lot of people are being team players. A lot of people understand the struggle as far as, what people are going through. We had a lot of people handing out food.
Yeah, a lot of
a lot of people handing out clothing and things like that to the homeless people in the area. So, we have been looking out for one another through this. And a lot of this is us where, we are taking care of each other. We're doing what in certain communities, the government is doing for other people, where, you have police officers in, I think, New York, where they were handing out masks and gloves to people who were hanging out in the parks. But, there are people who are in the subways and things like that, and they don't have masks because, they didn't have access to them. So it's kind of like that disparity where you have, you're expecting this to happen, or you're expecting to get this kind of treatment from the state or from the government, but you're getting it from your neighbor. And I think that is kind of what's pissing people off a lot, that their idea of what the government should be doing is changing because we see what is possible.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of people where they're like, well, I know that this can happen. And you start to question why it isn't. And you start to look at, the elected officials, whether they're,
So you guys are pissed off at the government right now, I would think. Big time.
I think that Black people, like I said, I think that we have lost our faith in the government. You have Trump in office currently, where from the gate, we knew that this was going to be an issue. The Black community knew it was going to be an issue. As
soon as he signed himself up for the elections, we just knew it wasn't going to be nice at all.
And then, a lot of people within the Black community aren't the happiest with Joe Biden as an option either.
They're going to choose him over Trump, I would say.
A lot of people are they're going to vote blue no matter who.
Yeah.
Is the current hashtag I think that they're going with. But I think that people aren't happy because you see, Joe Biden, I think he got on, he did a press conference or a rally, and he said that, instead of shooting unarmed Black men in like the back or the head, shoot them in like the leg or the arm. I mean, like, yeah, that's technically moving forward, but like that's not enough.
Still shooting each other?
Yeah, that's not enough. You shouldn't be shooting unarmed people. That's kind of the problem.
He definitely needs to choose a strong vice presidential candidate that can put a couple of sentences together for sure.
I mean, I think that the problem, like I said, is that people don't believe that it can be done through the government, by the government itself. I think that these people are now, a lot of people are starting to understand their power as far as how as a collective voice, we can get laws signed a lot faster than some of these politicians can on their own.
Well, let me tell you something. I think, from looking from afar and watching as much as possible as I can of the riots and the confusion and the movement, and also me being, a business owner and also having a family and being affected by Corona, I do feel that the country has sort of hit a rock bottom, both with our political leadership, the current conditions in the world right now. And I do believe that they're going to get better. And I do believe, just as I said before, Black Lives Matters, not just representing Black people, but representing many, many people of all different income stratas and, societal diversities. And I think that it's going to make a change. I don't know how it's going to make a change. I can't say for sure, but I think it's going to, maybe it's going to be the beginning of the change of the guards of the politicians. Maybe the old politicians on the way out, and new thoughts and new ideology and new behaviors will come into the government or move into the government because of this. And I sincerely believe that. And I think it's great to see how connected and in tune you guys are with, what's going on. You guys are definitely, super intelligent, super empathetic, and really, great people. And I'm really happy that I know you guys, for sure. Definitely. What's yeah, man. Hashtag peace sign. What else is going on out there before we, sort of wind things down a little bit? What else do you guys see with all this movement? What has hit you the most seeing this? Like, what sits with you the most? What sits and stews with you guys the most with this? If you could leave us with that couple of thoughts on that, about how it's affecting you emotionally and what you would eventually like to see as an ultimate change because of this.
Well, personally, even while I am a Black woman and being in America, I have a unique experience of being on kind of like both sides of the coin. I personally just, with everything going on, as jarring, as crazy as it can be, I just want to see some casual accountability. Because as we push for diversity, we're going to have to change mindsets, because all of this racism in general is a mindset that they believe and that they live by, and we have to change that. And that's not going to be something that, obviously happens tomorrow. So we're going to definitely need some casual accountability, like every single day. If you see something, you better say something. If you feel that your company is not as diverse or where it should be as far as today's, standards, you need to change that. A lot of people are getting criticized over the internet. Most famous, as far as it goes from what I've seen, is Anna Wintour. She was criticized in one of her colleagues' recent books, The Chiffon Trenches. He basically wrote about how Anna was very enamored with all of the things that were happening with the Black community with fashion, but it was never something that was actually reflected through the magazine, through the brand of Vogue itself, as well as Black writers. And we need to stop this. We need to make sure that everyone is getting their due, and that goes within the casual accountability. Let's make sure everyone is getting their due deserves. It's one of those things, like if you see like a little art competition with some kids and, they're just painting, even though they're not painting something fantastic, you still want to make sure the kid with the most concentration and talent and skill is getting what they deserve. And if that just so happens to be like they're Paki, they're Black, they're Korean, they're Chinese, then we need to make sure that these voices and these talents and these skillful people, as young as they are being voiced. So we need to make sure of this. Yeah, casual accountability. That's definitely what I want to see.
What about for you, Anthony?
Yeah, with me personally, I would like to see an investment in the youth. Once upon a time when I was in high school, you know, I got to see just how many talented young kids there are. And I mean, as talented as I think that my generation was and the kids that graduated with me, we were always in awe of what was yet to come with the next generation, and so on and so forth. And you see a lot of these kids, some of them even taking part in the protests. I can remember when I was like 12, I was more concerned of what Saturday morning cartoon I was going to watch. Like, I wasn't thinking, you know, let me rally with my community to improve race relations in the US. So I think that I believe that we owe it to them to invest in their futures, to give them unfeathered access to the things that they need, because, you know, once they're outside in the real world, it's not going to be so kind to them. So I think that, you know, we should be investing in education, investing in local infrastructure within low-income communities. Give these kids the chance to prove themselves, give these kids the chance to become the things that they can become, instead of being an antagonist or the antithesis to their struggle.
Exactly.
You know, you shouldn't be trying to place kids in a penitentiary. You shouldn't be trying to lock kids up. You
Right.
should be helping them. You should be making sure that they can become productive members of society. If you disenfranchise them this early on, then the future doesn't look too good.
They're always going to be stumbling. It's never going to be a fair move for them.
I think that.
Well, you know, I definitely think that, you know, the movement will have that effect and ultimately hopefully have that benefit. I think, you know, the more people that get to know the Black community and get to know the people will recognize that they have the same, you know, dreams, aspirations, and desires. And I think, you know, finding that commonality is what has been missing. And there's many, many reasons why that commonality has not been found, and why, you know, there's been such oppressions towards many different ethnicities, and, you know, especially the Black community in the United States. And there's a lot of conversations and a lot of hours that we can put to that of why this happened. And it's technical, and there's a lot of different things that, you know, the white community had done intentionally to oppress the black community. And it's obviously coming out now. But more importantly, I just think it's great that we've had an opportunity to talk tonight, and for people that are going to see this and hear you guys, just to see, you know, how wonderful you guys are and how connected to the pulse of this and your opinions and your feelings. And, you know, I love you guys for coming on. I think you guys are both awesome, and I'm happy that you guys are in my lives, and you guys mean a lot to me, and I want you to know that.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, guys, I'll be in touch. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Have a great evening.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.